Right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I want to take this chance to especially thank our LPs for taking the time to join the call and those who have submitted the questions. There's a lot of questions that came in advance. It should take us, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour to go through all of those. And of course, the Blykalla team, Michael and Shane, for being here with us. As you all know, I'm really excited to bring this opportunity with our syndicate, Meandros Ventures, and our co-syndicate, Jolt VC, to co-invest in Blykalla, which is Sweden's first SMR vendor and a pioneer in the lead cooling technology, lead cooled reactor technology. And what drew me to the deal is, and why I'm so personally excited, is that it sits right at the intersection of three massive forces which are shaping the global landscape right now, the global energy landscape. One is, we all know, the explosive growth in AI and the automation and digitization, which is leading to this huge power demand. The second is the national security, the need to secure domestic energy supply, which has been in focus not just in Europe but worldwide. And then the third thing is, which has taken a little bit of step back in certain parts of the world, is the focus and the urgency of climate goals. But one way or the other, in especially in Europe, it's highly prominent, and even worldwide, and it generally swings like a pendulum, so it's going to come back again. And there's nothing wrong in actually securing energy in the cleanest form of way, or cleanest form. And the Blykalla's main innovation is in the material science, which what they have done is they've solved the historical challenges of lead cooling reactor technology, and that has opened the door to commercialization of the safe, compact, and long life nuclear SMR with wide industrial and grid, and of course the DC application data centers. And they have world-class partners like Uniper and OKG, and we're going to talk about those and some of the recent partnerships that were announced, and I'll let the syndicates know as well, Alfa Laval, Baker Hughes, so we'll go discuss some of those. And that positions, Blykalla as not just another SMR startup, but as a leading European player, and as well as global now with the partnership with the public company that was recently announced in the US. So we'll go over that as well. So what you can expect over the next 30 to 45 minutes is we'll start with Shane and Michael with their introduction. I would love for them to share their background, their journey of, and then how they started with Blykalla, how they came about, what's happening in Blykalla, both in terms of technology and business. And if Shane can probably focus on the technology and Michael can focus on the business aspects. After that, we'll move into a set of questions and that were obviously submitted in advance, and then we'll also open it live. That will cover the recent developments, the technology, the commercialization, competitive landscape, sort of the target market, financing, and the sort of the roadmap ahead. And with that, let's dive in. So, Shane and Michael, please feel free to set the stage, take as much time as you want. And if it would be great if you can start with an introduction about your journey, what brought you to this point with Blykalla, how that has been so far, and we will take it from there. So, Shane, do you want to kick it off?
Yes, I can do that. So nice meeting you all. My name is Janne Valenius. When I was 12 years old, we had a referendum on phasing out nuclear power in Sweden, and I told myself that, well, why try to vote something away when you can solve the technical issues? So I decided to become to try to solve the nuclear problems. Let's see, and I made my PhD in quantum chemistry in Uppsala, and then I started my postdoc in reactor physics at KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Sweden, in 1997. So that's already 28 years ago. And I came to know about the technology developed for Soviet submarines, which means lead cooling, at a conference in 1998. And then I thought, oh yeah, this is going to make it. This is going to help us solving all the issues related to safety and to nuclear waste management. So I was able to get some European money because at that time the government in Sweden was not supporting nuclear research, and created a research team at the Royal Institute of Technology that became rather successful and is nowadays worldwide known. And then we made some technological breakthroughs, in particular in terms of developing new steels that are corrosion tolerant in liquid lead, which is the major technological challenge with this technology. And then so everything looked quite nice. But then after Fukushima, again, it was difficult to find funding. So I decided with my colleague then to found Blykalla, the company, in order to commercialize small lead cooled reactors. So that is now, almost 12 years ago. And we were initially our target market was the Canadian Arctic. We were talking to the Canadian mining industry about deploying our reactors in the Canadian Arctic off grid. Later we went to the UK. UK offered us to compete for a grant to deploy our reactors in the UK. So and there we developed the reactor that became what is now Sealer 55, the reactor that will be produced in serial mode in Sweden and other countries. 3 years ago, we got the first major venture capital investment from Northern, and we were able to build a company with a new management, a very professional management. I'm really happy with the team I'm working with. They are a fantastic group of people, very skilled and very talented, and I'm really enjoying to see how we are going to now make this a reality in Sweden and elsewhere. So maybe that's good for an introduction.
Thanks, Janne. And before I take over, I mean, you often talk in entrepreneurship about having tenacity and commitment and conviction. I think, Janne, your life's work and 40 years now of pursuing this is really an inspiration. And I think the reason many of us are at Blykalla to help realize that. So, hi everyone. My name is Mikael Frenkel. I'm the CFO of Blykalla since about 2 years back. In addition to the financing function and finance function, I also look after our commercial and business development activities. I have a background as a management consultant. I spent a bit over a decade at Boston Consulting Group and was a partner in their technology practice. Left that during the pandemic to be part of also building technology companies, helped build one of the challengers in the logistics space that today operates Amazon Prime for Amazon across the Nordics, but then was looking to do something on a more global and international scale with a lot of impact. And I was just fascinated by the technology, the IP, and the vision that Janne and Peter as founders had, and then the parties they had gotten, to come on board with one of the most reputable venture capitalists here in Europe or in the Nordic region, Norgen Launcher, as well as Uniper, the large German utility who had come in as a shareholder and a partner to the company back in 2022. The company had also received non-dilutive funding, first piece of large non-dilutive funding given to a nuclear project in Sweden. And this was also right at the time where, the nuclear renaissance that we're witnessing, that we're living, that feels like it's accelerating by the day or by the week in the past few years, was really starting to shape up. Those were sort of early days. I think when I came in, we were 20 people already. We're now 80 people, growing fast and advancing on a number of different fronts, which we look forward to sharing more about today, and also the latest fundraise that we're putting together. That's quite exciting, and that will help us take us even one step further on this journey.
Great. Thanks for the amazing prologues. Why don't we just jump into the questions now? Let's start with the recent development. I know, Michael, you shared some exciting news with me, in which I shared with the syndicate as well. You said you have secured a strategic investment and also developing this partnership with the leading public SMR company in the US. So we would love to hear more about how this partnership came about. Was this more like an informal relationship that had been going on for a while that just got formalized, and how closely will you be working together going forward? Would be great to hear the background and where it's leading eventually.
No, absolutely. I'll ask that everyone treats this as confidential information for the time being, but given the fundraise, I think it's also fair to share, and our partner have agreed that we share this. So we're really happy to announce that Oklo will co-lead this round and become an important strategic partner to us. So Oklo, for those of you who don't know, Oklo is an American SMR developer. Sam Altman was part of their board and chaired the board for almost a good 10 years before stepping away now because they have OpenAI as a customer. Company Oklo listed and are today, I think, trading at a market cap somewhere between 10 and 11 billion dollars, and I think are seen across the US as and globally as one of the leaders and one of the companies that have come the furthest in this SMR race. They work on a similar technology to ours, but slightly different. So they're also using liquid metal as a coolant, but in their case it's sodium as opposed to lead. Another of the sort of proven technologies that are among the advanced designs that are now challenging light water, which most of the commercial nuclear has historically leveraged. So it will be fantastic recognition, of course, to partner up with one of the leading players, and they're, as I mentioned, they're co-leading the round with a strategic investment of $5 million in this round. So on the partnership side, then there's a number of different areas that the companies are excited to collaborate on. One of them is related to the fuel value chain. Nuclear fuels are one of the more, let's say, constraining or one of the more challenging aspects of developing new reactors. This is where Janne has spent a lot of his research and his expertise on, and then we are developing what's called a uranium nitride fuel. But there's several aspects of this value chain where Oklo have made significant investments, and we think there's opportunity for us to leverage their capabilities, their infrastructure, in order to get our fuel. And we see that as a win-win. Blykalla can have a more capital-effective go-to-market strategy. Oklo gets an additional customer and validation that they did the right choice in investing in this infrastructure. So this is one of the areas. There are some other areas. One of them is leveraging our corrosion-tolerant materials in their cladding tubes in one of the components for their reactor design. Sodium reactors also need a level of corrosion protection. So again, this, like you mentioned up front, Haas, this is one of the core IPs and really one of the strongholds for Blykalla. So this is one of the things we bring to the table. And then I think more broadly and more generally, these are two companies, two CEOs that came together, have a very similar sort of vision, liked each other, very compelled by how the other company is working and how we're approaching this business. So I think there'll be more qualitative areas to collaborate on as well, changing learnings from things like licensing, go-to-market strategies as we pursue Europe primarily, and Oklo are focused on the US for the time being. A question one might have is, how is it to team up with a competitor in a space like this? And I just want to, address that up front and say, I think we and many others feel very strongly that this is not a winner takes it all market. This is, if you think about what is the demand for clean, safe baseload power that can be deployed close to energy users and that can be serially produced and deployed relatively fast. I think most people would agree that there is, I don't want to say infinite, but there's an exploding and a significant amount of demand for that. So those players that can get to market, that can develop the engineering, that can license their product, they have a very bright set of customers and demand to serve in the years ahead. So I think both companies felt good about that aspect as well.
So I think on this, Michael, one of the things I noticed is Oklo uses, like you mentioned, sodium, and sodium is highly reactive to water. I think their reactive temperature boils at like 800 some degrees, whereas lead is at 1700 something. Does that offer a margin of safety, and is Oklo interested in that aspect in any form or fashion?
I'm not going to comment specifically, I think, on what Oklo thinks, because I think they're pursuing their sodium cool design. We're pursuing our lead cool design. Lead has inherent safety features, and maybe Janne, maybe you want to comment. You have written extensively in your research papers and teach about the different advanced designs and the different coolants out there.
Yeah, I mean, as mentioned, the lead has a much higher boiling temperature than sodium. Lead has also a higher volumetric heat capacity, which means in order to achieve the same level of safety, passive safety, sodium, a lead reactor can be 40% more compact per megawatt. So there is some major advantages of lead versus sodium. Sodium is it's a more mature technology, especially in the United States. They have had experience from operating sodium cooled reactors. But while we are, I mean, in the lead area, are leading, let's say, innovation, and thanks to our new corrosion tolerant steels, we will be able to take lead coolant to the same maturity as sodium within the next couple of years.
I think Oklo is more like 10 to 12 meter highs as opposed to yours is Blykalla is 4 to 5 meter high.
Yeah, we are 5 to 6 meters high, and then that exactly reflects the need for a larger volume of sodium to achieve the same level of safety.
Yeah, so I mean, the way we typically summarize, the case for lead cooling when you compare it to the other technologies is it's passive safety in the most compact form, for the effect you get. So you're really able to get down to these really small designs and have this passive safety that lead offers. Lead has a high boiling temperature. It's at atmospheric pressure, so there's no driving force if you were to have any issues or any accident. It's not reactive with water or with air. It binds iodine, which is one of the fission products that are dimensioning for safety zones, things like that. Lead is also, if you think about it, the gold standard for radiation protection. If you go to the dentist, you get a lead apron during your X-ray to protect. So in the lead itself, we have radiation protection built in to the design. All these things build up to the safety case for lead. And that's, in the Swedish regulatory context, when we've done our simulations and modeled these things, it's obviously ultimately up to the authorities, but if you deploy one of our Sealer 55 reactors, you would only need to have a planning zone of a radius of 100 meters or so, 100 yards approximately around that. And if you compare that to large-scale light water-cooled reactor, that's tens of kilometers or tens of miles that you'd need to have certain measures in place around the reactor. So this is really a game changer for being able to co-locate with energy users, with industrial clusters, with data centers, and do that in a way that has just a completely different level of inherent safety. All nuclear is safe. We're clear about that. It's more about how you achieve it and what measures you need. And with lead, you get that built into the design.
Got it. Understood. And there's some other questions as well, so I'll come back to those in a bit, but focusing on the recent partnerships. The other one is the OECD. You mentioned that, their dashboard now ranks Blykalla as #1 in European advanced SMRs, except, outside of the water-cooled. You were already in top 5, if I remember correctly, even back in December when we spoke. What was the key, the impetus behind this recognition?
Yeah, no. So as you mentioned, the OECD has an agency called the Nuclear Energy Agency that works on nuclear topics. One of the things they do is they release a SMR handbook every year. I think this is their 3rd edition, and they look at different designs across the world, and they score them on maturity. So we were ranked as the 2nd most mature advanced design, now the most mature advanced designs. There is a light water design with established technology that ranks ahead of us in Europe, but in the advanced category, we're tied for 1st place with the Nucleo who's a partner, but also works on lead-cooled reactors. And basically, the NEA dashboard looks at 6 different dimensions and scores all companies on 1 to 5, and it's linked to your supply chain, your maturity on fuel, to licensing, to siting, public engagement, and they make an assessment of all those factors. So it's not per se an assessment of the technology, but more the maturity in advancing the design and in getting it built.
Got it. Well, that's an affirmation of the commercialization aspect and the maturity of the technology as well.
Exactly.
You also mentioned, right. So you also mentioned the recent partnerships. I know you already have a very strong partnership with Uniper, which is a strong strategic advantage because they are the utility company. They're the users eventually of the nuclear energy or the energy. But the recent partnerships with Alfa Laval and Baker Hughes and PEAB, how does that fit into the commercialization strategy or journey? And especially Baker Hughes, is that more with the US arm, or is there a different arm globally?
Yeah, no, but let me take a step back and talk a bit about how we've been building out the partnerships and the supply chain. So Uniper is sort of one of our oldest partners. They're a utility. They're one of the 3 Nordic nuclear operators, and they actually have an LOI, let's say an LOI, an option to buy 250 reactors from Blykalla. And if you think about that, they would be sort of one type of customer segment. We could have a data center as a segment as well, or as a customer as well, but then we would need, or we could sell to the grid, but we would need an operator, utility, an energy company that comes in and operates the reactor. So it's in that capacity that we should think of Uniper as a key partner and a customer or part of the customer. So they're obviously a fantastic partner to have, and quite unique for I think any SMR company to teamed up with an existing nuclear utility in that way. I don't know of anyone else that has done that, to be honest. What the next sort of key, as we're building out our supply chain, we've focused on getting a number of co-development suppliers in place for different components and different parts that we need. A number of these are in the material side, and most of them are Swedish or European. So we would be talking about companies like Alema, who do specialized tubes and metal parts for the nuclear industry. Höganäs does metallic powder for us. We're working with a number of other companies on high-speed laser cladding or different application techniques to build out these corrosion-tolerant components with the steel IP that we have. So that's sort of one area of suppliers. Then there's specific components where we have co-development partnerships, and there I would highlight the pump, where we're working together with KSB, a German pump manufacturer that has experience building lead pumps, and I think we're leading in that. So they're a co-development partner with us and are investing R&D into developing the pump for our design. And this is the same thing with Alfa Laval. And so Alfa Laval is a Swedish company, large industrial, listed, and active in heat exchangers. So they're working with us on the steam generator and on the concept for the steam generator and the manufacturability of that. Then there's sort of another set of partners, which are, if you think about Blykalla, we're designing the primary system, this 5 times 6 meter vessel with all the components and all the parts inside that will fission the atoms, circulate the lead, and take out the steam. In the full power plant, there will then be other partners that develop different parts. And that's where someone like Baker Hughes come in. So they are active in the turbine and secondary system part, what's referred to as the conventional island. So they're one of the partners. We've now entered into an MOU with them to get to a firm joint development agreement, but they're very interested in basically being a co-development partner and adjust their design so that it fits into our power plant. And we're talking to a couple of other players in that space as well. So it's more of a competitive tender still, even though we've gotten to an MOU stage with them. PEAB is another example. That's an EPC. So they're the ones who would do, let's say, the construction work on site. With our design, the whole idea is that you do very little on site as opposed to large scale nuclear projects or even some of the light water SMRs, you're talking about having thousands of people for half a decade or several years on a site. We're talking about doing something very standardized and repeatable in, taking a site basically from nothing to commissioned reactor in 2 years. And for that, we then have an EPC partner that can help us design, what does that process look like? How do you prepare a site in a repeatable manner? How do you, build the buildings so that they're standardized and can be deployed over and over again, together then with the primary system, the turbines from Baker Hughes. And then I'll highlight one last partner, that's ABB, the Swedish-Swiss Fortune 500 company. We've entered into a large partnership with them almost a year back. This is an agreement where they will help us develop the control room, the instrumentation and control processes, and some of the electrical work needed to basically operate and steer this power plant. So they have actually set up now a physical control room next to our test facility down in Oskarshamn on Uniper's power plant, and we're working there as we're building up our prototype and our test facility. They are building up this control room environment where we will build all the processes and the software that operators use to control the reactor. So they're a very important partner, and they've also said that they want to leverage their industrial capability, their global reach to be a go-to-market partner with us. So many of the large energy users are already their customers for automation or electrification or other ABB products.
Got it. Thank you. Coming to the technology side, Janne, probably you can shed some light on that. Was this the lead cooled design? I know you mentioned as part of the introduction, but would be great to hear a little bit more. Was the breakthrough alloy that you developed, was that as part of a sort of general material innovation that came about first, and then you recognized the nuclear application later? Or was the team's interest in nuclear sort of as the starting point, which eventually led you to focusing on solving the corrosion challenge for commercialization?
I worked from 1998 on lead-cooled reactor design, and applied to nuclear waste recycling. And then in 2008 or so, we got a major grant from the Swedish government to develop technology for lead-cooled fast reactors. And one of the outstanding issues at that time was the lack of a corrosion and irradiation-tolerant material. Because the Russian had corrosion-tolerant materials, but which is not really truly irradiation-tolerant. So I asked a colleague at KTH, Royal Institute of Technology, whether they would have an idea about material that could address this issue. And they indeed had one. It was they said it's a 100-year-old Swedish invention. It's aluminum alloyed steel, which is used for heating wires at high temperatures. So which is extremely corrosion tolerant. And what we did together then was that we modified that existing commercial alloy into an alloy that actually is tolerant also to irradiation by reducing chromium content, adding special reactive elements like zirconium, titanium, and niobium, and then you get and then what you get is an alloy that's both corrosion tolerant in liquid lead up to 800 degrees Celsius, and is also irradiation tolerant. So that is the way we arrived at this invention.
And maybe just to build on your answer, Janne, I mean, we've now continued to develop these aluminum oxide forming steels that protect. So today we have 3 families of these steels that we have patents around, that we have done numerous tests around, and that we've now started to industrialize. So we have built components. We've built hundreds of tubes, for example. We have ordered a 10-ton scale batch to ensure that these are produced in an industrial fashion, and we're using these now. When we're building pump impellers, for example, with KSB, or doing tests in liquid lead down in Oskarshamn. So we're we're more than a decade into working with these materials, industrializing them, and building out our patent protection around it.
So we got 2 more live questions here. Will the sodium and lead compete and you commercialize the winner, or will they be used in different applications around the world? I think they're referring to the Oklo using sodium, but other competitors as well, and that is one part of it.
Yeah, look, I think, like I mentioned up front, I think it's not a winner takes it all market, and there will be some different factors, I think, that make reactors successful in different applications and at different jurisdictions. So within Europe, there's a lot of focus on lead-cooled reactors. I referenced earlier this ranking, the top 3 designs are all lead-cooled designs. If you look at across universities in Europe, this is where the sort of top know-how on lead-cooled reactor design sits at different academic institutions. Janne having built up one of the leading ones here in Stockholm, Sweden. There's some in Italy and in other places as well. So I think regulators will learn about this technology. Customers will have heard about it, energy users will have heard about it, utilities will get exposed and educated to it. I think, like Janne mentioned, in the US, there is more of a history of research reactors on sodium-cooled reactors. So for some period, that will probably have a clearer path forward in the US. There's also, I think there's some different aspects here around like how large is your reactor. We are working on a design that's 55 megawatt electric. We've talked to a lot of data center players as well as industrial clusters that like that size. They like the idea of building this out incrementally in a park, maybe building up towards 200, 300, 400, but doing it gradually and sort of being able to invest a bit like you can build out a windmill park. There are other designs that are, also considered SMRs that are more 200-300 megawatts electric output. I think those will be used more for maybe on-grid deployment. You will end up having larger construction projects. It's not going to be as modular, and it's not going to follow the same kind of deployment logic. So it will fit better for some applications.
And the next one is, who are the top lead-cooled SMR competitors? And I think you already mentioned Nucleo, which is also you're in partnership with. So that's an Italian. I think I mentioned this in the memo as well. Westinghouse in the US is developing one. There's GMET from UK. Are there any other prominent ones, or who would say you're the top lead competitors?
No, I think those are the ones. There's a research institute in Belgium that, together with Ansaldo, also an Italian company, have set up a consortium to build a demonstrator. The Belgium institute is called SCKCEN. So it's sort of a research institute that have said that together with these partners, they're working to make that a commercial product one day. Obviously, they won't commercializing it as a research institute, probably Ansaldo, which is an Italian EPC. So I'd say, but really, it's Nucleo and Blykalla who I think rank highest in studies like this, and who I think are the most prominent ones. And obviously, our stronghold is the materials IP, and this is where we're collaborating with Nucleo. They are going to market in France. There's some different codes and some different regulations that you need to follow in France to qualify your materials. Nucleo has a pretty advanced testing infrastructure to do some of these tests and submit test data then to the French regulator. So we have said that we would like to work with them, leverage their infrastructure, and get additional data and tests done and qualified also under the French code. This could lead to us licensing our materials to them in France, but that's not something the companies have formally agreed on today. I think one more thing that's worth noting when you talk about lead cooling across the world, Russia is building lead-cooled reactors. They're building some Brest 300. given the current state of geopolitics, it's obviously not something that one can follow, or that are, they're not integrated to the Western part of the world from a market perspective. But there's some public information that gets shared on their progress there, and it's not an SMR; it's a large-scale reactor. But it at least proves that one of the countries that have done research on all the different coolants and technologies have prioritized and are moving forward with lead-cooled reactors as their choice. And they're also using a similar fuel composition as us.
One of the other things is, and I think that question also came about, is like, what's your approach to proving that your alloy and the fuel technology can last for decades? In the lead coolant, I think they're mainly referring to the alloy itself. They can last for decades because it's new. The whole, you haven't gone through the life cycle of 25 years. And if the challenges arise, what is the fallback plan there?
Jana, do you want to take that?
Yes. Now that we have done tests, 2-year continuous exposure to liquid lead at 550 degrees C. And what you find out is that the growth of the protective oxide scale is logarithmic. So you can, in a quite robust fashion, extrapolate that to long time periods. We have also done accelerated irradiation tests. So we have irradiated our steel in a sodium-cooled materials test reactor up to a irradiation dose which is equal to 40 calendar years in the reactor when it's operating, and we are also going to do accelerated fuel irradiation testing, where you can actually take the fuel to burn up, which is in 2 years, which is equivalent to 25 years of operation in our reactor. So the response is we do accelerated testing, and we use robust modeling techniques to convince ourselves and our customers that this is a 25-year lifetime is viable.
Got it. Yeah, funny. And if not just in material science, but even in the food industry, accelerated testing is the norm. You just run through any food products for accelerated testing, and then you find out the shelf life. So it's kind of the similar thing. What are the remaining technical milestones which are required for Sealer 1? And when is the Sealer 1 expected to be completed, both the design and the ultimate build out? I think I already mentioned a lot of this in the long form memo, but it would be nice to hear in your own words.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jana.
Yes. One thing that we want to prove to ourselves and to customers is the lifetime of lead pump. So we are going to actually build 2 or 3 different lead pump test facilities during next year, where we will test the durability of the pump impeller for and what we want to show is that our materials can be used to operate the pump impeller for 12 months continuous operation at the operating temperature, and we will get positive results from those tests during next year. When it comes to deployment of Sealer 1, and we have the intent is to start the licensing procedure with the Swedish government in January.
Nice.
Yeah, indeed. And I think just to build on that, so what Jana mentioned with the pumps as one of the sort of outstanding technical questions, this will basically guide the scheduled maintenance window. I mean, in conventional reactors, you have scheduled maintenance often around fuel replacement. We will keep the fuel in for 25 years, given that it's a breeder reactor and has a 25-year fuel residency, which is a nice feature. But we will have a scheduled maintenance for pump replacement. So this is it's not a deal breaker. It actually has relatively little impact on the LCOE or the business case, but it's important nonetheless, right, to understand, is it every 18 months, 12 months, 24 months that we stop the reactors for a couple of weeks and replace the pumps. And then I think building also then on the technical milestones, I think these are some of the things where we sort of need answers, let's say, that are outstanding. then there's, of course, engineering work to be done. We don't see any showstoppers there, but this is why we're building the integrated test facility. That's a fancy word for basically saying a prototype or a replica of the reactor, but in a non-nuclear environment. So you heat it electrically with electrical wire, and then you test all the other systems. And if you think about it, fissioning the atoms is sort of not the new thing here. It's the systems and the engineering to control that, to have pumps, to take out heat from the steam generators. It's the instrumentation and control, making sure that you're able to weld together and put the system together. So this we're doing in this non-nuclear facility, where you're not constrained by regulatory processes or by having to manage the presence of radiation, and this makes it an order of magnitude cheaper, and you can move much faster, and you de-risk all the engineering. So we will have a much higher level of confidence that there's nothing in the first of a kind nuclear reactor that we should have tested or tried or simulated in closer to real life conditions. And yeah, all of this, we have a couple of licensing. So just on the timing aspect of it, like Janne said, we go into the first step of the licensing process with the Swedish government right after New Year. We're, as it looks like right now, from what we understand, we will be the first advanced design in Europe to reach that stage. And then licensing, the Swedish government is pushing, similar to in the US, for the radiation agency to be efficient and swift in their licensing application. Still, we don't know exactly how long that will take. There's been talk about mandating them to do it in 18 months, but let's say it could take up to 2.5 years. As well. So depending a bit on the scenarios here, this should put us in a position to at least start construction towards the end of the decade and have the first unit in operation sometime in the beginning of 2030s. And we model a few different scenarios in our product roadmap for when we will hit these different milestones. So this is something we work and refine on an ongoing basis.
All right. The next question is more on the competitive positioning. I think we have covered or we have touched a lot of these aspects already, but the specific question was, who do you see as your closest competitors in Europe and the US, and how do you compare across technology, commercialization, and speed to market?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and it's a bit of how you think about the market. I think in one sense, I would say that the biggest competition is from light water reactors. I mean, if you back up a year or 2 years, when we talked about sort of this nuclear renaissance and the political support, the demand for new nuclear, really opening up in a way it hasn't done for decades. I would say a lot of the focus in the industry and with utilities and with customers was on light water. We now have a window to build again. Let's focus on the technology that's known, and let's focus on the technology that is proven. I think that has changed a lot in the last 2 years. And one of the things that really shifted was last year when Amazon invested in X Energy, and then Google signed an offtake agreement with Kairos in the US that showed that when some of the world's largest companies with the probably most dense talent pools, where they get to place their bets for where their energy needs are going to come from in the future, they bet and they put their money on advanced designs with benefits and advantages similar to Blykalla's technology. So I would say since then there's now been a much more intense focus on advanced reactors. I think on the competitive, so to some extent, it's carving out our space and showing that we're progressing fast enough that conservative utilities sort of have to pay attention and have to engage, and that maybe incumbent nuclear developers who come from light water start investing and start shifting as well with these currents that we see. Then I think that the question of sort of who's a competitor, we're in a very fortunate position to be the only Swedish SMR developer. We're the only advanced SMR developer that has any plans to license in Sweden as of now. If you ask the regulator and the politicians who's sort of present, there's a large utility, Vattenfall, the state-owned utility, that announced earlier this week that they will build a light water reactor on a former nuclear power plant site in Sweden. There's a project developer that has said that so far they will deploy, conventional light water technology. And then there's Blykalla. So in a sense, in Sweden, our competition is really proving that we can deploy the technology and realize the promise of advanced technology. If you then look longer term, or you can of course start thinking about will we be compared to other lead cooled designs like Nucleo, but they again have a quite different design. It's 200 megawatt electric. They're focused on a different market. Are we going to get compared to some of the US gas cooled reactor or sodium cooled reactor players? I think it's very hard to foresee. I think right now it's all about keeping momentum in the execution, getting to market, getting that first demonstrator built, proving that you can build a park of units with predictable costs and show the learning curves and get the repeatability. I think if we manage to do that in Sweden, we have a fantastic position to scale this internationally. And we're already starting to look at international markets. So we have a partnership with a project developer in Norway called Norsk Kjernekraft. Together with them, we're looking at several sites, and they're setting up an SPV right now in around one of these sites to start the engagement with the municipality and the local energy company around deploying our units there. We have had interest from markets in Southeast Asia. We have initial discussions with some European partners in European markets as well. But I think it's also an important signal for us to send that right now we're doubling down, we're focusing on Sweden. This is our path to market. And I think it's for any company in this industry, it's crucial that you have a sizable market in your home market, because for us to engage with the local ecosystem and be credible and known here in our home market is really a competitive advantage. And maybe on that note, I'll add one more thing about the Swedish market, which makes it also, I think, uniquely attractive. So the Swedish government has made new nuclear one of their top priorities, and in the spring they've passed into law a co-financing framework for the five first gigawatts of new nuclear capacity. And what this framework entails is really three parts. First, they'll offer government debt for 75% of the projects at the government's lending rate. So today that would be 1.95% in interest rate. So really cheap debt for 75%. They offer a price and market guarantee through something called a contract for difference. So basically, they guarantee that we will get a fixed average price for the power we produce. So it takes away the need, if you will, for power purchase agreements or taking risk on demand or price levels in the market. And then thirdly, for the 25% equity investment that will be required for new nuclear projects, they will offer return guarantees to investors for a number of periods. So this is seen as one of the most comprehensive and de-risked government schemes to stimulate investment in new nuclear. So that this will for sure help ensure that new nuclear gets financed and gets built in Sweden.
Right, and that was one of the most attractive points that I found about Blykalla was you got right partnerships with suppliers and the technology developers on the material side, like you mentioned, Baker Hughes and whatnot. And then on the customer side, you have strategic partnership and investment with Uniper. So they are the buyers of that, and everything, the ecosystem is supported by the government itself, which is extremely important in, high capital intensive projects.
Yeah, no, it's important pieces of the puzzle that make this fit together in a very good way. So indeed.
One of the questions was, outside of Sweden, are there other EU nations which are embracing nuclear, and have you had any conversations with the interested parties? I think you already touched on those, that you're already in partnership for SPV with the Norwegian company. You have partnership with Nucleo, and every Denmark or France, everyone is looking back into create either restarting the nuclear program, or if they have already started and they're also going into SMR. I explained all this quite extensively in the memo too, but am I missing something here?
No, but I think just to emphasize really, how strong the momentum is. I mean, if we would have backed up a year and you would have listed the countries in Europe that were less enthusiastic about new nuclear, you would have talked about Spain, Belgium, Denmark, and Germany. And just in the spring, in a matter of 2 months, we had announcements from all these countries that in some in different shapes or form, basically reversed or update their stance on nuclear. So phase outs being cancelled, investigations into new build outs or lifetime extensions, Germany agreeing to support France on all EU initiatives and all EU legislations that advance nuclear. So Denmark ending a ban on nuclear that's been around for 40 years and now launching an investigation to using SMR as part of their energy mix. So I think this just says something about the momentum and the pace of change here in Europe.
Yeah, exactly. And Spain just went through that massive outage of electricity, and they've come to realize that they cannot just, they have to look into that. And you said, I think Germany just restarted the program in 22, which they've removed the ban from nuclear. So definitely developments happening there. The other question on target customers is, I think once again, we have already touched this quite extensively, but who are the target customers for SMRs? Is it governments or utility companies or DCs? And maybe you can also shed some light on, like the 200 to 300 megawatt. Those are obviously more applicable to the utilities, but are you focused a little bit slightly more on the side of DCs, data centers?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would say there are two long-term customer groups. One is utilities or energy companies. One is industrial users, industrial energy users. I would say our solution is probably uniquely fit for decentralized, local deployment, close to the energy users, close to energy clusters where you can build out the park. And if you then look at large, energy intensive energy users, DCs are the ones that right now are the most aggressive. There's a lot of capital going into AI, which then, eventually will need to secure its energy supply. A lot of these projects are greenfield, so you can also be a bit more flexible and a bit more creative, whereas, a mine is located where a mine is, and then there's some limitations then linked to how you get infrastructure and, to have energy production there. But, the combination of the business criticality of getting power supply to scale your data centers and the capital flowing into AI and the greenfield project sort of made it a perfect storm for SMR demand. So right now we see that it's data centers that are really sticking their neck out, putting money into the nuclear industry, writing offtake agreements and betting quite significantly on our type of solution. And I think linked to that, Haas, you mentioned that we will cover some of the recent updates and partnerships. So we're in the process of writing LOIs with 2 Nordic data center developers. So that will be linked also to specific sites that we have now in our portfolio, in Sweden, where we aim to deploy. And I think a good thing again here is that Sweden is a very attractive destination for data center deployments. I think all US or international large hyperscalers all have operations and data centers here in Sweden. We don't have earthquakes. It's geopolitically deemed as very safe and neutral and stable. So it's just been a place that's been safe and secure to invest in when it comes to these data center deployments.
And yeah, that was one of the questions. These 2 DCs, data centers, are in US or Europe. So now you've already answered that. Coming to the commercialization and licensing roadmap side, are the sales of SMRs one-time in nature, or do they entail sort of ongoing servicing agreements as well?
So the latter. If we think about our business model, there will be 3 types of revenue streams. As we sell these then to utilities or energy companies. First will be the upfront hardware sale. Second will be ongoing recurring revenue. This could be in the form of services, of maintenance, of component replacements, and there'll be software as well that is licensed as continuous software agreements or SaaS agreements. And then thirdly, we have IP linked to our fuel, and fuel is a pretty large part of the cost in this type of reactors. So we will have a business model around fuel as well. And we're elaborating right now with a couple of different models, either something that's sort of a leasing or royalty-based model where you try to variabilize the fuel because it will have a lot of value in the back end. Again, given that this is a breeder reactor, it actually creates more fuel during the operation. It sounds counterintuitive, but after 25 years of operation, you actually have more fissile material in the fuel than when you started the reactor. So that means that you can actually come up with some pretty interesting business models around that. But in either case, we would sell this with a markup.
Got it. The other one is the Sealer E licensing. I think it's more in reference to the licensing by 25, 26, which I mentioned. So the question is, the 24-month licensing process sounds ambitious. What's your confidence level, and how would delays impact the commercialization roadmap?
Yeah, I mean, we have a good relationship with the Swedish regulator. We've held regular meetings with them for the past 4 years or so. So Janne has held educational sessions now, like 3-4 hour workshops, educating 40 staff from the Swedish Radiation Agency on lead-cooled technology, the operational experience, the academic research that exists out there, the safety concepts that they'll have to license and sort of evaluate eventually. So and we also have brought them to a few conferences or gatherings where other countries that were looking at lead-cooled reactors, other regulators were gathered. So there's also an exchange between different regulators that foresee that this technology will come into play here in Europe. I think I'll add one more thing, which is there's also an ability to do pre-licensing in the new process in parallel to your formal application. So that means that we can, as of 1st of January next year, we can sort of fast track difficult questions and say, can we, get this sort of out of the way, and then, get feedback early on that, so we can complement or adjust our full application. So that's also a benefit from this revised or updated regulatory framework that is coming into place. And we've been part of shaping that. Our head of legal and regulatory, Therese, has been an advisor in the expert panel that advised the government on how to modernize the Swedish nuclear laws and processes. But yeah, I think then back to your question, Haas, on what happens if it takes 3 years instead. I mean, I think the honest answer is then it will delay us by 1 year. There might be things you can parallelize in terms of preparing the site in anticipation that you get your license to start construction there, which are non-nuclear. There's probably other things in our development and R&D. We can order long lead items to try and win some of that time back. But I think this is one of the few things in our overall roadmap that you sort of can't spend money or outsmart, really. You just have to do your best and work with the regulator. I think all of that being said, I think we're quite confident on the approach. And one of the things that also really help, and which we remind people of, is that the radiation agency's mandate is to keep the population and people safe from radiation. And the concept that we are suggesting and that we're licensing is just orders of magnitude, less risky inherently. If you were to have accident, if you do have something that happening that you don't want to happen, it's just not comparable to the traditional, type of impacts or the traditional reactors. So yeah, that's my view. Janne, I don't know if you want to add to that. You're on mute.
No, that's very well spoken.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I think, and I want to just quickly mention that this is, any kind of regulatory challenge is just the nature of the beast. I mean, that's just in the industry. So it's not specific only to Blykalla. It's worldwide. Everyone's going to face the same thing. And the mention, what you mentioned is about the safety factor. Obviously, lead has its own, it acts like a shield. It's an intrinsic shield against radiation, plus 20 sort of 500 meter the margin of safety as opposed to 25 square kilometer for water cooled reactors. I mean, that's a order of magnitude impact. I got two more questions on financing and funding side, and I want to be respectful of the time as well. So I'll probably just raise all the questions at the same time, and you can answer all those together. One is, what's the specific use of capital for this round? And then beyond this raise, what is the plan for funding the demo reactor and scaling? Will you need another big round or project financing, which you already touched on, that everything, beyond the demo will be project finance. But how far is the capital raise expected to take Blykalla with respect to the 3 phases of commercialization?
Yeah. No, so I would say there's 4 key use of funds linked to our milestones in this round. One is this non-nuclear test facility and the test reactor, and really what we're doing there, right, is that we're de-risking the engineering work and showing that the technology, without being limited by licensing. That's number one. Number 2 is what most of our engineering team works on today, which is the design and the engineering on the nuclear reactor. And that's advancing, the design and the engineering work to a level where we can start ordering components and preparing to build. So that's really the second one. Second one, and the first one also really feeds in then to licensing, which is the third use of funds. Go into the license application, have a first site set up, and de-risk. We'll start by de-risking the political risk, because the first thing that happens in the licensing process now in Sweden, as proposed, is that the government gives their permissibility or their go-ahead for the project, and then you go into the radiation agency's licensing process and the environmental licensing process. So that's the third area. And then fourth one is really commercial and financing. So with the first site selected, we want to set up an SPV, an asset company that will own the first few reactors. That entity will then apply for this government funding, the 75% debt and so forth. And there will be a process to go through to get that funding. But when we're through this round, we should then have a funding commitment for the first park of 6 reactors. So, I mean, that will be in the billions of euros of debt undertaking from the government. That will then, of course, need equity funding for the 25% remainder, but will be then in a very strong position to raise that, having secured the government part of it. So those are the 4 use of funds, and linked to that, sort of what we achieve and how it de-risks our path to market. We've modeled right now that we need around 100 million euros more in equity financing before we break even as a company. We'll start getting some early revenues when we serve the first SPV, but that's the capital need to get to break even. And this strategy is based around, we want to become a technology OEM, but we know that we also need to be actively engaged sort of as a project developer here in the beginning for the first few projects. But we want, we don't want Blykalla to be an asset owner, and we don't think our shareholders should, fund the assets. There's this government funding, and there'll be, different types of equity available to fund the asset companies. So all the reactors, including the first one or the first ones, will be in, you can call it the project financing setup, but it's at least a dedicated asset financing with this government component linked to it.
Got it. And I think there's only one more thing left here, which we already touched on, but considering now you have the partnership and you've already announced that it's with Oklo, how does Blykalla compare to Oklo in terms of technology, business model, performance, and time to market? So my understanding, which I tried to answer to the LP directly, is that, one is that we already talked about Oklo using sodium, whereas Blykalla uses lead, and they have different boiling temperature, 800 versus 1700 plus, and so the sodium is also more reactive to water. So there's the whole, the aspect of the safety. The second is the size of the reactor. Blykalla is 5x5 or 4x6, somewhere around that 5x6, whereas sodium cooled will be at least 12 meter high, 10 to 12 meter. On the fuel side, I know you use uranium nitride. Oklo, I think, uses the regular uranium LEU plus. So those are the two things. And the other thing I saw is Aulo is more like a pod-based system that they have 10 megawatt electric and they bundle into a 50 or 75 or 100. Whereas Blykalla is to go with it's a single unit system with a 50 for the point of for the proof of concept, and then I think 80 to 85 megawatt electric for the Sealer one. Am I right in my understanding, or have I missed quite a few things?
No, I think you covered some of the key aspects. Jana, do you have any other additions on the tech difference?
Well, Oclave has a metallic alloy fuel, which can it not be reprocessed with industrialized reprocessing methods that operate in Europe. So our fuel is much more easily reprocessable.
Got it. Understood. And that aspect is only applicable to Europe, but not in the US.
Now, in the US, there is no commercial reprocessing capacity at all currently. So they would have to develop it by themselves.
Got it. Is there any performance difference eventually in all these technologies once you have 80 megawatt electric? Other than the lifespan, I guess, sure, you don't have to refuel. Your fuel can last for 25 years, whereas some may need refueling every 7 or 8 years. But is there a major difference in performance?
It's basically the important thing is that when producing about the same power, we achieve passive safety in a much more smaller volume, in a smaller volume than what Oclave does. So, which means that, and volume translates into speed of manufacture. So our reactor units should be possible to manufacture more quickly because they are more compact.
Which eventually translates into lower costs and more profitability, plus your maintenance is low, plus your safe margin of safety, plus no refueling, which again doesn't shut down the reactor at all, so you don't have to worry about that. And also, like Michael mentioned before, the fuel at the end of the life cycle is more than what actually was input, so the output is eventually going to be more, so you become sort of like a self-fulfilling in a way after a certain point, after a few years.
Yes.
Great. I think that brings us to the end of the Q&A. I want to thank everyone. Thank you, LPs, for joining the call and those who sent the questions in advance. And definitely, Jane and Michael, thank you for sharing your time and insights and for giving us this opportunity and the LPs to hear directly from you. We are really excited. I'm really excited about the opportunity and what Blykalla represents. For the LPs, I was just want to send a reminder that we are closing tomorrow, 29th. This was supposed to go on to at least 15 September, even after that, but the round is already closed, which is a great win for the company. It's oversubscribed. It's already 40 million. And we do need to hit a certain minimum to complete the investment. So I would highly encourage you to commit as much as you're comfortable with. And also, if you have anyone in your network, please invite them. We only have 2 days left, nearly 48 hours. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. But once again, thank you so much. You all have made this a valuable session, and Shane and Michael really, really appreciate it. And have a great weekend to everyone.